Hey everybody, welcome back to another wonderful lecture. Um, Today I got a few things to go over concerning evolution. Like I said, I'm planning for this to be the last lecture, and our test should be a week from today, on Monday, day 29th, just a reminder. And that's on chapters 16 and 17, so it's going to be a big test, a lot of stuff, but we got the rest of the week to kind of review and go over all these different concepts. So, starting with this lecture, we're going to look at natural selection a little bit more, specifically different types of selection that occur and kind of what drives those adaptations to occur more often in the population. Then we're going to talk about this mathematical formula called Hardy-Weinberg that's used to kind of calculate the frequency of certain alleles. And we'll talk about more about that this week. Then we'll talk about how new species are formed, which is called speciation. So, so far, again, we talked about natural selection. Traits that improve survival, reproduction will accumulate in the population. Hopefully you guys have a pretty good understanding of that. We also talked about genetic drift, how these random changes, these chance events happen that alter the gene pool of the population. So natural selection is more gradual, genetic drift is more sudden. Some pictures. Again, just showing it here. The brown is more successful because it's probably camouflage. The green starts to dissipate. Here, green got stepped on. More brown starts to occur. More brown starts to occur in the population. Moving on. So natural selection is selection that acts on any trait that affects survival or reproduction. So we're going to look at these different types of selection. So looking at predation selection, what that is, physiological selection, and then sexual selection. So for predation selection, you can probably guess what this kind of is talking about. It's basically looking at what traits or adaptations that you have that help you either in being a predator or help you prevent being preyed upon. So these are all different types of traits that have occurred, either behavior, like being in a herd, traveling all together, camouflage, obviously blending in with surroundings. Mimicry, if you remember, is when one object will copy the look of a dangerous animal. Like, what's a good example? Like bees, like lots of flies will have the black and yellow coloring just to look like a bee, so no one will mess with it. Another example is like monarch butterfly is poisonous, but you have a bunch of other butterflies that copy that look, that orange, black, and white look, so that it won't be preyed upon. Those are different examples of mimicry. And obviously speed helps you get away or helps you prey, be a predator, be a better predator. And then defenses, both physical defenses, so like horns or thorns, or chemical, meaning the taste, like pepper. It's very hot to the taste, so they developed that so that they wouldn't be eaten by different animals. Physiological selection. So physiological deals more with your body functions. So disease resistance, how efficient you are, like with using oxygen, food, and water, biochemical versatility, protection from injury. These are all types of things that has to deal with your physiology, your body, that helps you gain an advantage within your population. So an example of this was this fish actually developed this protein, this blood protein, that prevented it from freezing. It actually prevented ice crystals from starting to form, therefore preventing the whole thing from freezing over. Pretty cool. So its own natural kind of antifreeze within there. Uh-oh, I'm running out of battery. Sexual selection. So sexual selection is acting on reproductive success. So whatever makes you successful in reproduction is going to be passed on throughout the population. So this is when you start getting these unique kind of characteristics, especially between the two sexes. So it really doesn't matter unless you reproduce. So if you can't reproduce for whatever reason, your genes aren't going to be spread. So you need to have some kind of advantage reproductively, meaning that you're more attractive in a certain way to your mate that you can reproduce and therefore spread your genes. So examples talked about, mane, different colorations in the birds' antlers are also a sign of reproductive success. So again, we also have this in humans. So we look at what is considered attractive. So attractive, like celebrities, a lot of times they have various characteristics that make them attractive, whether it be big lips, light eyes, dark eyes, hairstyle, whatever it may be. They have certain markers, and so we have that as well. Humans rely on that, but we have more variety in the choices that we see as being attractive. Sexual selection acts in all sexually reproducing species. Something that is interesting, a term I want you guys to know, is this term called sexual dimorphism. It's basically the reason why males and females look different in certain species. Like human males and human females, we look different. It's because through that sexual selection, we've gained differences in our appearance. When you look at the male peacock and the female peacock is brown, kind of a boring bird. Male peacock, beautiful, bright feathers. That difference is done. It's called sexual dimorphism, and it's directed through sexual selection. Sexual selection causes sexual dimorphism to happen. That difference between males and females. So you see here, birds of paradise. Obviously, very beautiful looking bird. Female is pretty boring looking. So it influences many, many different things. And yeah, it can actually act in opposition to natural selection, where like peacock, male peacock, that does not help it survive. It does help it reproduce, but it does not help it survive. It's not an advantageous trait except for reproduction. And that's really the only reason why it's still around, because the expectation for all males is to look like this, whereas the female looks pretty boring. All right, the last thing on selection, and I'm going to quit because I'm running out of battery, is the directions that this selection takes the population. So what I mean by that is the first one, and you guys definitely need to know this. You should be able to recognize these different graphs. So the first one is called directional selection. So in this case, what this graph is showing is that you have a wide distribution of a certain trait. In this case, the giraffe neck and horse size, or horse size. So here, it's kind of right in the middle. You have really small giraffe neck to medium, normal giraffe neck to really tall giraffe neck, or really long giraffe neck, or size in horses. So through natural selection, that large horse size or that long neck becomes advantageous. So now all of a sudden the population shifts towards having a longer neck in giraffes, or being bigger in size for horses. And so the whole population, so basically these little guys, whether it be little necks or little horsies, actually disappear, and you see this more larger horse or long neck giraffe becoming more the norm. So in that case, that's called directional selection, where the whole population moves to a certain trait. The next one is called stabilizing selection. In this case, the normal or the mean, the average size, becomes the most advantageous. So the extremes become less and less extreme. And so you see the whole thing thinning here. And again, this side represents the extreme of the trait. In this particular case, we're talking about birth weight. You don't see 12 and 13-pound babies, mainly because they're too big to get out of the uterus. And you don't see too many small ones surviving because they're too small. So you see more of a mean happening around 7 8 pounds. So more often than not, you'll have that 7 8 pound baby than the extremes. And so again, that's the mean is become selected for. Over here, this trait, the long-necked or a large size of horse is selected for. Here, the medium-sized birth weight is selected for because it's the most easily birthed. It's easy to be born from being that size. I don't know what I'm saying there. In any case, and then the last kind is called disruptive selection. And just what disruptive selection is basically the mean or the average is actually at a disadvantage. Therefore, the extremes have the advantage. So you're going to start to get two dominant, like very long-beaked and short-beaked birds in this case, or with mice, either really large mice or really small mice. You don't see any of the medium mice. And that can happen for a variety of reasons, as we'll discuss more in class. But in this case, directional, the whole population moves in a certain direction. The trait moves in a certain direction towards an extreme. Here, the medium-sized trait is selected for and therefore become more common. Whereas the disruptive, the mean trait is at a disadvantage. So the extremes are selected for, meaning that they will populate more and more, whereas the mean starts to disappear. And this is usually because they're specialized. The long beak are more specialized than the medium beak, and the short beak is more specialized than the medium beak. So therefore, these guys, these extremes, on a test, be able to see this graph like this and be able to potentially describe a situation where this might happen. And we're going to talk more about this in class. I'm going to end it there for this particular conversation, and then I'm going to pick it back up once I get some power. All right, thanks, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.